Welcome to Journey to Novelist. This channel is devoted to new writers and those writers new to pursuing the goal of becoming a published author. And this particular video is part of a series of videos where we are putting some software to the test in head-to-head battles. We have pitted Dabble against Motif, Campfire against Read Studio, and First Draft Pro against AutoCrit. And there should be a link in the upper right corner to get to those videos if you are interested. There should also be some links in the description to get to the playlist. Now we are going to be moving on to a fourth battle in this particular video. Now, the video that I've recorded for this particular video was recorded way back in around August of 2025. So hopefully the two softwares that we are going to be looking at have not changed very much. Now, these are going to be part of the online apps that I found during my 2025 software review that happened early in 2025. We're not going to be paying attention to those that are downloaded and installed. Just look at those that are through the browser kind of online apps. Now, I didn't want to actually choose which programs went against which, because then I could match them up to give one software an advantage over the other. So I decided to make it very random, and I put everything in a randomizing wheel and then gave that wheel a spin to come up with my matchups. And today we are going to be looking at Novlr versus LivingWriter. Now, Novlr can be found at novlr.org and LivingWriter at livingwriter.com. They both have some access to the program for free. LivingWriter has a 14-day free trial, and then after that 14 days you have to pay. Novlr has a free starter plan where you can work on up to 5 projects for free. They just don't give you all of their tools under the free plan. With the Plus and Pro tiers, you get additional features as you move up the tiers. Now, their most expensive way to get Novlr would be paying the $18 a month monthly for their annual Pro subscription. And of course, the cheapest would be free. With LivingWriter, they just have one paid plan, and the most expensive would be paying $15 a month monthly for their plan. And then, of course, they also have an AI add-on, which gives you access to AI tools to help you brainstorm and things like that. And those tools will cost you $30 a month to have those AI add-ons. Now we're going to be comparing these programs by having them jump through some hoops and try to do some tasks related to writing a novel, starting with a project setup, and then we'll award points for how well they do. But we're going to start with project setup, which includes the creating of the novel project, which should be pretty easy and is almost a give me for all of these programs, along with being able to put in the title. That's should be something that any of these programs is going to do, because when you start writing, you're going to want to have some way to refer to that project. So we're going to start with that. So this is project setup, and these are our tasks. One is to create a novel project and maybe put that project as part of a series, which is the trickier part of step 1. The next thing we're going to want to be able to do is do a pen name, the genre, date, and title, and maybe a subtitle. Now, like I said, the title is pretty much a give me along with the novel project. That title is probably going to be your working title for your story. And then there is the structure or template, be able to choose some sort of a format to follow when you're doing your writing. 3 points should be pretty easy for a program to get, and of course they could get bonus points if they do really well. I've loaded both of these programs up into my browser. This is LivingWriter, and then we of course have the Opera browser that I'm using to display them and to access these programs. But let's go ahead and go back over to the Novlr dashboard. This is the Novlr dashboard, and this is going to show you all the information about your writing habits and give you some reading to do and things like this. This is the actual Novlr dashboard. There is also their writing studio, which is going to give you information on your particular projects. Now this is the project section, and you'll see it says no projects yet, but it gives you a create and an import project button. Now the import project button, we're just taking note of it because we're going to want to be able to give the award a point for that later, but right now we're worried about creating the project, which is also under the Writing Studio. Now I'm going to click this, and this is the Writing Studio. And here it will list all of your projects. And here again is the Create Project button, and of course the Import Project button. So if you have something in like a Word document or text document, you can import it as part of your project. We're going to create a project, and it gives you some options for the type of project. We're going to stick with novel, and we'll just say create. And now we are in the novel dashboard for this particular project. So we're going to go ahead and give it a name, and we're going to use Deadpan Promotion. I could put a synopsis if I wanted to, and I can also put a cover image, something to identify this project among all my other projects. And I have like just a little image that was made in Adobe Firefly, and I'm going to just go ahead and load that with an open. That's a little something extra that allows me to be able to visually identify which project I'm in. And if I go back to the Writing Studio, it's listed there. If I go back to the main dashboard, it's now listed under the projects as well. So I'm going to go back to the Writing Studio again, because this is where we can put in some of that other information. Under the Deadpan Promotion, we're going to want to try to put in that pen name, genre, date, subtitle, and find the structure. Now I'll tell you right off, I did not find any structure template in Novlr, but we can see that there is a create date, which gives us some good information, and that will always be there for us. And we can use this tags field to put in information about the genre and pen name. So right here you see some default tags that we could use, and I'm just going to pick fantasy as my genre. And then I'm going to put in a tag for my pen name, and I'm going to put JT Novlr. And that way, any books I write under JT Novlr, I'll be able to find through these tags. So that gives us a way to put a few of these things, the pen name and the date and the genre. And the subtitle I could have put in the description if I wanted to, but there's no specific place for the subtitle. So we're going to be giving them a point for being able to create at least part of that. And as I said, there is no way to actually have a template, or at least there's no default ones. There are some sites where you can find templates people have made. Basically, they've created a template in some other type of document program, maybe in a Word or a text document, and they import that as their template to when they start the project. So the first thing they would do would be import project, and that would give them the framework or skeleton for their project, but it's not built in. So with LivingWriter, let's see what they have. There is your blank manuscript. This is one way you could start your project, and you see there's also a button for blank manuscript here. There's an import manuscript down there, so that's the same as with Novlr. And then you'll see under your manuscripts there's also a blank and an import. Now this little section down at the bottom will go away once you actually have some manuscripts started, and there'll be something different here. We can pick one of these templates to start us off, and that will do our number 3 here, our structure template. That solves that problem. And it really doesn't matter which of those templates I pick, because I'm going to have a chance to change it as soon as the dialog comes up. So I'll just choose this button here that says choose template, and I'll click that. And here I can put in my project title, and I can put in a description, and right here you see there's a field for author, so I can put in my pen name right here. Here is the template, and you'll see with this drop down I can now choose whatever template I wanted. It doesn't matter which one I pick to get in here. I'm going to pick the 3-act structure and create, and now you see there's the 3-act structure in my document. So that is LivingWriter's way of doing a project setup. So we've gotten the pen name, the title. We did not have a place to put the genre. There was no place for that. So here is the manuscript listed here under my manuscripts. You see those other buttons are gone, and there's the create date, and there's a sub menu over there, which if you see there's a little pop-up that handles some of your exports and imports. But what we want to do is try to put this into that series that we were talking about, because even though there's no way to do my genre, I could actually create a folder to handle the series part of my project setup. So I'm going to do that. So I'll hit create folder, type in the name of my series. In this case, it's Lost in Between, and hit create. And now I have a folder for the Lost in Between series. I can take my book and add it in there. I can drag, or I can use that shortcut menu and say move to folder and pick the folder. And now my book, if I open the folder, is in under the Lost in Between series folder. So that's how I could keep track of series of books. So I'm going to give Novlr 2 points, and I'm going to give LivingWriter 3 points for the project setup. Let's go ahead and move on to the plotting and planning part of our matchup, and we want to handle some brainstorming, all of your major plot points and the story arc, and any other tools having to do with the plotting and planning. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this next section. So let's go ahead and come back into our software, starting with Novlr, and we'll see what they have. So we're going to go open our project from our writing studio. We're going to go into Deadpan Motion, and this is our dashboard, and we have a word count of nothing, and you'll see there's one section in this story. That's the default section. Now we can go into this planning button here, or use it from the sidebar right up there, and you'll see there is my section. Now what you can do for Novlr is you can start breaking your story down into sections and adding synopsises for your sections based on whether they are acts or if they are chapters, or maybe just scenes that you want to track, however you want to track your story yourself. So I'm going to break these down into, first of all, my acts, because we're going to be using the 3-act structure in LivingWriter. So let's go ahead and see if we can duplicate the same kind of thing in Novlr. So here's my Act 1, 2, and 3 as sections. So that gives us a way to kind of start breaking our story up, and you'll see it's listed under the manuscript in those acts, and then I can start adding a synopsis as to what happens in each of those acts. So here I'm going to put that this is the start, and I want to start with the ordinary world and include the inciting incident all within this Act 1. So I've put some notes there. So I have the beginning, middle, and the end, which are basically your 3 acts. Now I have some options here. Now I can start breaking these acts down further if I need to. So I can create a nested section, and this might start to be my subchapters if I'm using chapters, or these might be my actual chapters since I'm starting with acts as my main structure. So let's go ahead and make this first my opening, and I want to add another section. I'm just going to break these down into the rough sections that it's including in acts rather than, chapters. But this gives you an idea of what you could do with the acts and scenes and kind of building a structure for your story. And that's under the planning section, where you can see all of these different cards. Now we also have like a note section, which we'll get into later. But let's go ahead and look at LivingWriter and see where they start for the breaking the story up. And as of course we loaded in a template, so we automatically have these acts and our main plot points here that we were creating manually in Novlr. So then we have some other icons over here on the side, and one of them gets you to your manuscript, your planning section, which includes a bunch of different tools, including some grid systems and freeforms. So there's quite a bit under this section. So under the manuscript, that's where you see those same sort of cards like we had in Novlr, and they are what's listed here in your sidebar for your story structure. So chapter, Act 1, inciting incident, Act 1, plot point 1. So you can kind of see what that looks like. So Act 1, for each one there is a synopsis or some information about what happens in each of those sections, and it tells you how many sub-documents are included in each of those. So this one has a count of 1, and you'll see an open button for it because there is a count. Here we have chapter 1, And we can start adding additional chapters in here too. So let's go ahead and add a chapter 2. And I could add a description or just hit create, and there is chapter 2. And you'll see under Act 1 exposition there's now 2 chapters listed. And I could just click here and add a chapter under this Act 1 plot point. So maybe I'm just going to put chapter X because I don't know exactly which chapter this is going to be. And there's another chapter. So you can go in order. You can do it from the manuscript board here and then drill down into your individual cards. But you'll see this one now says 2 because there's 2 chapters under there. And the plot point 1 now lists 1 card here in this little icon. So that's how you can kind of break it down. And then of course you have your notes on your sideline, which is going to give you additional information, and you can add additional notes there to help you with your planning. So that's a very flexible way to do your manuscript planning for your structure of your document. But there are other planning tools in here, starting with your standard grid, which you'll see this is kind of plot lines, and then you have a freeform grid and a planning board. You can add additional planning boards under here and base it on any of these types of boards. You can have like a text board or one for element planning, so you can put that there and say we want to put an element on this board or a scene or an outline. You can choose it. And how you go about using these, it's going to be a lot for you to figure out on how you want to handle using these. I'm sure if you look, you'll probably find samples that people have done. But on this kind of a freeform grid, you can put these different things and wire them together based on connections or how they affect things or how they're related to things. So you have that kind of option if you want to use it as part of your planning. Just one more way to go about planning. And that's the freeform grid. Now, this standard grid is going to let you do your actual arcs. So you have your primary story arc, and then you could do another arc down here. That might be your romance arc. And then you could add the different pieces of those particular arcs in there. And then maybe I want another type of arc that is the whole series. Maybe the series has an arc, and there's certain things that happen in the various books of the series. So you see, LivingWriter has quite a few features here for doing your planning. Overall, I think that for the plotting and planning, LivingWriter has a lot more tools. So I'm going to give them 3 points, and Novlr does have some way to handle it with your different acts and chapter planning. So they're going to get 1 point because there is at least something to help you with structuring your story. So let's move on from plotting and planning to character and setting creation and handling those. We're going to start again with Novlr and look here for our program. We're going to be dealing mostly with this note section down here to try to handle some of this. So what exactly are we trying to do? We're trying to create characters and settings, because those are important to your story. You're going to need to be able to keep track of them and what they look like and where they are and information about them. And maybe identify the purpose of why those things are in your story. We'd hopefully like to have some sort of questionnaire or template to help us fill out information about our characters and settings. And then it'd be nice to be able to put in images, notes, and maps of our world. Maybe what the clothing looks like, maybe notes on timeline or family relationship, and then maybe track specific important objects through the story. Like in Deadpan Promotion, there's a key, and the key is very important to keep track of who has the key. That would be an object we want to track. So let's get into this and see what we can do for tracking some of these. So we're going to be dealing with notes, and we can make a new note. And here it just says untitled, so I can come up here and write the title, and I'm going to call this character list, and that is my note. And here in this character list note, basically I can start typing a list of my character name. Then I could maybe make another note, and this other note might be a note that I have information about my settings, and I list my settings here. I have an office, I have the gate location, and maybe I list them, and maybe I give them a description for them in this note section. Not very detailed, but there's at least some way to put some notes there. So I can't completely say Novlr has nothing. Now let's go over to LivingWriter, and they add a lot of things. They have this whole section for elements here, and you can actually create element boards. And then there's all these tag types that you can use: character tag and object and setting, and you can create your own tags as well, which I can add a type here. So I have these element boards now. I could put elements on, and here is my board, and I could add elements, or I could do this detail board or a simple board. So let's go ahead and add an element to a simple board. Let's go ahead and put Devin. He's one of my characters, so my type is character. And I could put a description of what Devin looks like. And there we go. We have a card that represents Devin on this character board. Then I maybe have a gate key. I identify this as an object I'm tracking. I maybe put a description. And here is my detailed. You can see Devin. And here is actually the format for a character, or this character format. And I can add a relationship. If I wanted to, I could make it a relationship between a different character. So if I go to element board and I add an element, and maybe I go ahead and add, let's go ahead and add Katie in here as a character. And I create that. There we have Katie. Now if I go into Devin and I add a relationship, I could put the current relationship between Devin and Katie. And I could write information about what Devin's relationship to Katie is and what Katie's relationship to Devin is, based on the point of view of the relationship. Maybe one way it's a co-worker, and the other one, maybe that's the crush. You can also identify different types of elements by colors. So I'm going to put my object here as being pink, and I'll leave my characters as being the blue, so I know what are characters and what are objects just by a quick look at this board. I'm going to go ahead and add yet another one. I'm going to add an office, which is a setting. And I'll create that. And maybe I make that green. All settings are green. So there's yet another type of an object. And now we also have these little images here for the different objects. And I can add an image in from something I already have on my system. So I'm going to load an image, little images I got from either an AI generation thing or some clip art. So here's one. This one's from Firefly again. And there I have a little symbol to represent my office there. Now it's not a very big image, but it might give me an idea of what I'm looking at. Maybe I also have a fantasy town. Now it would be nice, and I don't know whether it's possible to do this, to have default colors for different types of objects. Here is an AI generation thing. I don't think the AI works, but let's go ahead and give it a try. I think I would have to pay for that. I don't know whether they give you any free number of ones you can do a month or anything. So let's just generate a town and see if it actually gives me one. And it gave me something. So there must be some free credits, at least in the free trial version that I'm using for part of this recording. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And that is maybe my fantasy town image. So there is that. So that's what one of their AI features is, to be able to generate something right away. So that is the characters and settings. You can see there's not true full questionnaires, but there are some templates to help you, like plan relationships and things like that. Something to guide you. So also on the planning board, there is also a section for research. And you will find that right down here. This is the research section. And here we have a way to put notes for a lot of other things because we have these free-form sections that we can do. So we're going to add a section, and we're just going to call this fashion because we want to keep track of what the clothes look like so that we can know what our characters are wearing. And I'm going to add an image to represent this fashion section. So this is another way to put images in, and I will just upload something. So I have this image that has all of these cloaks. So this is going to show like their wardrobe. Think of it as a prop department's wardrobe rack. So there we go. Now, once I put this in here, you'll see I can put different things under my research section. I can put articles and images and documents and notes for this particular section of my research. I'm going to go ahead and add an image in here. It's kind of funny, the little add image is over here on the right side, so you have to hit that to add your image in. It took me a little while to find that button off to the right, so I want to put my mage cloak right here. And again, this is just an AI generated image. I like using AI for just getting the feel of the wardrobe because it doesn't have to be exact, because it's only being used to spark my imagination and not for any type of promotion or actual artwork for the actual book or anything. So, but there we go. We have an image for our mage cloak, and I could add a bunch of other images for different cloth items in here for this fashion. And then I could even add another section that maybe is the laws. Now I put laws over there as a note section for my Novlr, so I'd want to have the same thing here, and maybe I actually have documents that list the laws. So maybe I have a note that says this is the basic rules of magic. So now I come back out here, and you can see I have my 3 sections of research, and I can easily see what I've got. So that handles all these images, notes, and map sections. So LivingWriter definitely gets some points. I'm going to end up giving LivingWriter 6 points for all the character setting creation stuff, and Novlr 1 point because LivingWriter just has way more than Novlr does for this particular section. This next section is the writing environment, how you create your chapters, rearrange the parts, do editing, spelling, fonts, backgrounds, margins, speed of movement, and how it handles when you're actually trying to type your story out, when you're actually working on it and trying to get those words on the page. So let's go back over and start again with Novlr and go back to our manuscript. So here we just go into Act 1 and we can start typing. This is our writing environment. It's very easy. Not a lot of complications here, so we can just pick our chapter or title and scene or wherever we want to start and start typing. So here we go. And then we can just click on the next one to go into the next section, and that gives you how your stories work. We can jump into different acts. We can add additional sections. Another chapter down here. Let's call this chapter A. And then we could like rearrange this just with drag and dropping of this chapter into different sections. So that's easy enough to do for rearranging your different sections of writing. Maybe we call this scene A and we put it under our opening. So there's a lot we can do there with just dragging and dropping. It's pretty easy. We also have the plannings area here, and this is going to allow you to add synopsises and do some things with your chapters here as well. You can see what chapters are in a particular part and go ahead and add them and rearrange sections here by dragging and dropping them in this larger plan. You can drop them into each other, and that's the ability to create chapters and scenes and parts and rearrange them. Now, as far as the spelling goes, I'm just going to come in here and type something wrong. You'll see it doesn't even notice that there was spelled incorrectly, that it's a typo. But maybe when you're doing your first draft, you really don't care because you You shouldn't be nitpicking your spelling and stuff on your initial draft anyway. There are some settings having to do with formatting, with changing some of your fonts, so that is in here for your writing environment. You only have a few things you can change, basically the point size and whether it's serif or sans serif. So it's very limited in what you can change in your writing environment. Now this is only for visual effect whenever you're actually writing. So if you want a larger font on your screen so you can see it better, that's all this is for. You have a proofreader, but that is part of the Pro version. You have a light or dark mode for your actual typing. So not a lot of features having to do with your formatting on screen, but it's a very simple writing environment and they've kept it pretty clean. So that handles the fonts, backgrounds, etc. So let's go ahead and look at the writing environment for LivingWriter and what it has. Now we already know we have all these chapters and sections, and you can drag and drop these around as well in your manuscript and planning section, and you can do it here in the sidebar as well. You have a little bit more when it comes to fonts and things like that to choose from. Up here you can choose your fonts from different ones. But I'm just going to keep it at Arial right now. Now this is how it types, so it obviously has some spell checking because it can tell that that is not a real word and underlined it in the red. So we can tell right there that there is some spell checking available. We also have a zoom for the writing environment so we can see what we're writing. We can drag and drop around our various chapters and acts just like we can in Novlr. So they're pretty equal in that regard. So LivingWriter has some other things as well as the spelling and the rearranging parts and the chapter scenes. We haven't got into the backgrounds and margins and a few things like that, so let's go ahead and look at some of those things with LivingWriter. We already know Novlr is very limited in those type of features. If we go up here to mode, we have a light and a dark mode, much like Novlr has a light and dark mode. You also have a focus mode where it cleans everything off and you just have a writing environment with no menus or anything visible, and you can just type here. This is so you're not distracted by all those tools around. And this of course is the light mode. You can of course zoom in and out on your space so you can kind of see what you're working on a little better. There's some typewriter scrolling so that your cursor stays more in the middle of the screen rather than waiting till you're at the bottom before it rolls off. That's what the typewriter modes tend to do. So that pretty much wraps up the writing environment. For the first two, the create and arrange, they're pretty much equal. And so Novlr's getting 3 points for that part and LivingWriter gets 3 points for that part. Plus they get 3 more points for a total of 6 points because of that whole fonts, margin, background part of it. The spelling, they're pretty much equal because even though Novlr doesn't have it, that's their free version that doesn't have it. LivingWriter is always paid, and once you pay for Novlr, you have some of the spelling stuff based on the tier that you pick. Now, LivingWriter has the typewriter scrolling, focus mode. They have a lot of different fonts available. That's why they're getting the 6 points. So overall, 3 for Novlr, 6 for LivingWriter. And that brings us to our last section of the software review. And that is the file and project management. Now we're looking for importing text, that is stories that you've already started, getting that in there. Exporting text, be able to take it out to back it up on your own system or format it in some other type of system. Also backups and versioning and archives, and we're going to see if they have any of those things, that is obvious as we go through the programs. So let's go ahead and get into this. We saw with both Novlr and LivingWriter that they both have an import text button that you can use to start your project, and we saw that early in the project setup section. So now we're back in our browser, and I'm going to talk about this archive in Novlr. For the free version, you only get 5 projects you can work on at a time. If you need more than that, you will have to take one of those projects you're working on and put it into archive to free up a slot. Also, if you want to delete something completely from Novlr, you first have to move it into archive and delete it from there. So let's show you how that works. I'm going to come up here to my dashboard, and you'll see my deadpan promotion is listed here. So I'm just going to create another thing, a project for a short story. And here we go, new short story. I'm just going to leave it called that. So here we go. Now it's listing 2 projects, our short story and deadpan promotion. If I want to get rid of this, first of all, I have to put it into archive. Now just moving it into archive, and it won't show here, you basically have to let this screen refresh. So here we go, it's listed there now. To delete it, you have to move it into archive and then delete it from there. But as soon as it's in archive, it actually frees up one of those spaces that you needed for projects. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. Now from here, you also have the option of doing your exports. For deadpan promotion, we could export this to various file formats. And again, it's in the same place. Click here and you'll see the little export button. You hit that and it brings up a dialog where you can pick the file format you want to go into, Word, PDF, an ODT file, or an EPUB book if you have the Pro version. So we're just going to export to a Microsoft Word document here. Then all I have to do is, I'm going to leave it at the lines height how it is, and there we go, we exported it, and I'll go ahead and open it. Now it's just going to open in some trial software I have because I don't have Word on this particular computer. So here we go, and here is our Word document, our .docx file, and this is what we've written so far in deadpan promotion. Of course, it's just dummy text. You can see there's the title, and here are our acts and all the text that goes with them. So that is our project. And now it's saved out as a Word document, and it's safe if something happens to it on the system or I lose access to it there, or if I want to print it out and do some hand editing or read it later, it's out. So Novlr does pretty well there. They have exports, they have imports, and then they have the archiving for your entire story. There's also exports in a bunch of different places here. You could export just a particular act. So let's just do this act as a PDF. And again, I'll open it and show it to you here. Here we go. And here's the PDF, the Act 1. It has my pen name there, and there's nothing really in the act, so it's pretty much a blank document just saying Act 1. So we've gone over the archiving and the exporting, and of course the import was part of the project setup. So all that's left to look at here in Novlr is backups. And right here under your settings, you can see there is a place that handles backups. And you have the ability to sync your files to either Google Drive or Dropbox if you have those. But you'll see it says upgrade to sync. So that's part of the paid tiers, the premium or pro plan for Novlr. But keep in mind that when you export to your Word document, that's a form of backup as well if you do that on a regular basis. That is how they handle backups here in Novlr. And we're going to move on and we're going to start looking at LivingWriter. But I'm going to say that Novlr is going to end up getting the 4 points. There's not a lot to do with backups, but they do pretty much cover everything else in some way. Not very much in versioning either, but you could do that by simply saving out a copy and calling it something and then moving on. So that's it for Novlr. Let's go ahead and look at the LivingWriter in a little bit more detail and see how they do. Let's jump back over into LivingWriter now. So let's change our browser, and right away we can see the import button. It's right here. So there's our proof that they do import. The next thing to look for is some of our exporting. believe it's under the manuscript section here, and right here there is export. And once you click on this, it does ask you if you want a Word document or PDF document, but basically if you hit one of these, you're going to end up with this export options where you have the ability to pick exactly what you want to be exported, the entire manuscript or specific chapters, or the elements like your different characters and objects and things like that. You can have that actually exported, and then you can choose whether or not you want the subtitles and things to put in there, or the notes for chapters and things like that. And then you just pick what you want to export it as, a PDF or a Word document. They also have the Google Drive, Dropbox, and Amazon Manuscript, but right now we're just going to do a Word document. And we're going to go ahead and hit export, and that will allow you to export your document. And again, I'm going to open it right here. Now I did go ahead and put Word on this computer. So here we go. And you'll see there's the chapter headings and the text. And if we go ahead and scroll down, you'll see we also have the subtitles for the various scenes and other parts below chapters. So you have chapter headings and then your subheadings, and there is basically your text downloaded. So that is the export here in LivingWriter. And I like this little dialog box, and you don't have as many file types to choose from, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and look and see what else we have here. We have the ability to completely duplicate our document, so we could make a duplicate in case we want to keep it as it is, maybe give it a different name as part of our archiving or versioning. There are some other things to do with revisions and version history here. I did not go into depth, but we're just taking note that they do have something here. So coming back to the dashboard, we could go into our series folder and find our project, and the little shortcut menu that pops up here does give you access to the exporting for Word and PDF, as well as the ability to clone your manuscript or delete it. So you don't have to get into all those other menus or even open the project to be able to do some of those high-level file management tasks. Now quickly, let's just go ahead and open the revisions tab. I know I said I don't know very much about it, but I just want to show you that it does open a sidebar, and it has information over here based on your different versions that are available or that you made. And I don't know exactly how you make them. I did not get into that, but there is something there that we're going to just take note of. So I think that pretty much does it for looking at the two programs. Novlr is going to get 4 points because they do at least have something in each of these categories. They can import, they can export into multiple formats. They do have backups, even though it's really to a paid version, and they have the archive, so you can archive your whole project. So I'm going to give them 4 points, even if they don't have anything specifically for versioning. Writing out backups or exports to like a Word document and dating it correctly can work for your versioning and for your backup. So I'm not going to dock them for not having versioning. LivingWriter is going to get more points. Novlr is getting 4 and LivingWriter is going to get 6. And they're getting 6 because their export includes the ability to also export notes and character information and that kind of thing, even though they only have 2 file formats, a Word document or a PDF file. So they do have some versioning, kind of confusing, but it's there as well. So they're going to get 6 points. Overall, Novlr is going to end up with 11 points, and LivingWriter is going to end up with 24 points. So LivingWriter is the winner if you are looking for paid software. If you're looking for free software, Novlr would be the winner. So hopefully this video was helpful for you, and please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and that way you'll get notifications when there's new stuff. Now there was going to be 2 more videos in this series, but there might only be 1 if I even get to that, because one of the programs I was going to review, and that was going to be Shakespeare for Everyone, that was going to be included on the list. I was informed by the creator that Shakespeare is going away. But that does still leave several programs on my list. And I don't know whether I'll try to squeeze all 3 in there or just do 2 of them and, leave the other one out. So good writing to you, and thank you for watching.